Hi, and welcome to Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast.
Nice touch.
On this particular show, I talk about classic rock albums that either had an impact on my life, or rock music in general, or both. And be rest assured, there's no country or rap nonsense to be found here.
Nice touch.
So welcome to Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast.
Nice touch.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's the classic rock brainiac known as Terrence Reardon on Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast. The podcast that doesn't need Wikipedia or any of those left-wing atheistic pieces of work sites to get the reviews done or any of that hoity-toity nonsense. I use real sites like Discogs and books because I like to read real things, not off a stinking computer screen. And today on the show, I am going to give you a great show, when don't I, on a band who 50 years ago this year formed their classic lineup. And it's a band that is one of my all-time favorite bands, especially for their 5 studio and 1 live album run done between 1973 and 1983. The band called Supertramp. And I'm going to be talking about their 1974 masterpiece, Crime of the Century, which I've had in the can for a while, but I had to record a brand new intro and new outro because my old voice recorder that I used to do these episodes on kicked the bucket, bit the dust. But before I do that, I've got a little lengthy diatribe on a couple of things. And I will save the Kiss diatribe for next episode, but I will also get to the Roger Waters issues he's got with his former Pink Floyd bandmates in just a moment. But first, I want to congratulate Pink Floyd on the success of the 50th anniversary Dark Side of the Moon box set, which, as of this recording, debuted at number 48 on the Billboard album chart. So basically, the album has now spent almost it may go up to 1,000 weeks on the charts, which is unheard of on the Billboard 200. Whew. And of course, the Live at Wembley 1974 album peaked at number 49, so Pink Floyd fans are still buying the albums in droves. And yeah, I have that box set, and yeah, I have that Live at Wembley. Bought them because I'm a completist nerd. And yeah, I'm proud to have it. But I won't be buying the Roger Waters version of The Dark Side of the Moon, which I'll be pissing upon in just a few short moments in my rant against Roger and his shenanigan behavior that's been going on as of late. Me venting my spiel against Roger Waters and all the crap he's been pulling in the last 2 months since I've done a new proper episode. Roll the footage. As you all know, I'm a diehard Pink Floyd fan. I have every album. I saw them on their final tour. Yeah, so what if Roger Waters wasn't there? At least you had the rest of the band. 2 original members, Nick Mason and Rick Wright, and David Gilmour. It was the 3rd concert I ever went to, still the best concert I've ever been to, and yeah, I'm of the opinion that thinks The Division Bell is on par with Wish You Were Here's best Pink Floyd album, in my opinion. I know a lot of people may not agree with that, but remember, it's just my opinion. And there's people who don't like post-Waters Pink Floyd. They call it a phrase that the late Timothy White, who was a critic at Rolling Stone magazine, who coincidentally dropped dead of a heart attack a few years after he coined the phrase. And like I said, anyone who coined that phrase to describe post-Waters Pink Floyd, the karmic cost of saying it is high. And I figured I would share on this intro why I've begun and now am distancing myself from Roger Waters. Well, I've defended him for his antics. I was like, well, I gotta cut him some slack. I gotta cut him some slack here. But now, what he's done is just inexcusable, unforgivable. And what he's been doing over the last 15 years has been unforgivable as well. So, let's set the stage. Everyone thinks this Waters-Gilmour feud has been going on for like 4 or 5 years. Well, it's a little more complicated than that. It goes back to 2014. Yes, all the way back to 2014. And the reason I say this is because Roger Waters was trying to get everyone and their mother to boycott Israel. You know, Roger doesn't like Israel. So in other words, he doesn't like Jewish people. I, on the other hand, love every form of people of every walk of life. There's good, bad apples everywhere you go. And I don't agree with all the stuff that Israel does in their political things, but they have a right to exist as a free country. And what happened was, Roger Waters has been trying to get every rock star entertainer to not play Israel. And a lot of people told him off, including Alan Parsons. In 2014, Roger was trying to get the Rolling Stones not to play, I think, either Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, one of the two places. And Roger was asked by this Brazilian newspaper, here's the screen cap right there. The interviewer asked him, you played with David Gilmour at the Hoping Foundation event in 2010, which is a charity for Palestinian women and children, you know, with positive sports programs and good-natured things, not terrorism things, but actually good things that does a lot of good for Palestinian children to keep them out of getting into a life of crime or whatever. And a lot of celebrities endorse it. And you don't have to be anti-Semitic to support the Hoping Foundation. In fact, it does a lot of good for people. And especially women and children. And then the interviewer said, can there still be new performances of you with him and Nick Mason for a political cause? Here's Roger's response. I don't know. The Hoping Foundation was one thing, but David won't follow the same path as BDS, Boycott, Divest, Sanction, a.k.a. the Israel boycott. Nick Mason at the time said yes. Nick joined me in a letter to the Rolling Stones saying they would not go to Israel. But David has a different view, and that's okay. Well, apparently it was not okay, because shortly after that article, Roger Waters went back on his word and started attacking David Gilmour and Richard Wright again, saying that he was twice the musician that either David or Rick ever was, disrespecting Rick, disrespecting David, and basically saying that they were basically his puppets. Huh, what a classy thing to say, Roger. Without David Gilmour and Rick Wright after Sid Barrett left, you were the one that kicked Sid Barrett out, by the way, Roger. Without David and Rick, you would have been reciting poetry at your local university there, Raji, old boy. And we know you've gone, you know, you hate Israel, and you say you wouldn't mind living in, you know, now this brings us to the current interview you did with the Berlin something or other. I want to thank Darren Locke for the article here below. Roger Waters ran his mouth to some German newspaper on how Russia is great and Putin, feeling kind of sorry for Putin, although he's condemned Putin in the past, but now he's like feeling sorry for him, yada yada yada, and, you know, saying I'd rather live in Russia than live in Israel. What fucking ever, Roger. Pardon my language, folks, I didn't mean to cuss that right there. But here's the truth. You said I'd rather live in Russia than Israel. You're out of your mind. Putin is a brutal leader, okay? I mean, the only president that stood toe-to-toe with him and actually threatened to kill Putin if Putin didn't cut his crap was ironically the president you hate the most, Donald Trump. Yes, folks, Donald Trump prevented Putin from doing any attacks during his tenure as president. Because under George Bush II, Putin attacked Georgia, the country Georgia. Then, a few years later, under Obama, or as James David Manning, a black pastor, called him the long-legged Mac Daddy, I love that name, he attacked Crimea, or whatever you pronounce it, Crimea, whatever. Under Donald Trump, Putin didn't invade anyone because Trump basically said, if you invade any of these Russian subsidiaries like Ukraine, I'm going to nuke your ass. And this is what Putin probably had to say, and an interpreter had to say afterwards.
What did he say?
He says, don't mess with orange-haired man. He's a lunatic. He's a nut.
What did he say?
He said, like, Trump is one crazy motherfucker, man.
Flunked Russian, didn't you?
Yeah. So on to Trump. Putin didn't do a damn thing because he knew Trump meant business. People may not believe it, but it's true. So Roger's been going on, Putin sympathizer, trashing the Ukraine, took a shot at the Pink Floyd charity single, Hey Hey Rise Up, which was done last year for humanitarian purposes for the Ukrainian Relief Fund, which has earned over $1 million already. And Roger said, oh, how sad to associate the name with them. Well, apparently David Gilmour's wife, Polly Sampson, took offense to Roger's bullshit and had this to say on her tweet about Roger's rants on an interview. Quote, sadly, Roger, you're anti-Semitic to your rotten core. Polly, we already knew that because of his anti-Israel shenanigans, threatening people to boycott Israel, calling Israel a apartheid state, Nazi state, comparing Ukraine to Nazi Germany. Sheesh. I don't know who's worse, Roger is Adolf Hitler or Tommy Shaw is Napoleon. Both leaders were sick. A Putin apologist, you ain't kidding, and a lying, thieving, hypocritical, tax-avoiding, lip-syncing, misogynistic, sick with envy, megalomaniac, enough of your nonsense. Lying, yeah. Roger basically lied to the people. In fact, he lied to me. Because I really wanted to believe in my heart that he had changed, he had grown up, he was mature, whatever that means. I'm 47 years old now. I'm not some punk kid who's easy to manipulate and dissuade. And I've not ever done drugs in my life, so I can easily detect BS. And I really wanted to believe that Roger had changed. And he had me and many fans fooled very good for a while, until he basically, metaphorically, spat in my face. Thieving? Yeah, taking credit for things that David Gilmour and Wright did, amongst other things. Yep, that's true. Hypocritical? You got that right. Tax avoiding? Nailed on the head, because why does Roger Waters live in New York State? Oh yeah, to avoid the English taxman, because the English taxman takes a ton of money out. So yeah, Roger is a tax avoiding, doesn't like to pay taxes. So that's why he lives in the United States, so he can avoid it. Lip syncing? Well, Polly, you hit the nail on that one, because we know Roger's been lip syncing now for over 17 years in every concert. And that's the major reason why I stopped going to see him after 2012's Wall Tour, which in hindsight he said was to be his last tour, but he lied about that. And yeah, here's footage from 2017 of Roger lip-syncing during a concert. And he forgot to go to where he was supposed to be. Roll the footage.
Yes, mate. Do stuff out, I'll take one, you can both share it. Okay. There you go. Do you want to stand on either side? Yeah, mate. I'm just going to knock on this and get the other way. Look, don't fuck around, alright? Please, sir. Just no, I'm serious. Yeah, I can smile. I've been smiling all my life. Here we go. I know.
Britney Spears, huh? Well, Roger's become Britney Spears. A lip-syncing, lying cheat. Misogynistic? No surprise, he's always been abusive to his wives. He's been married 4 times. Now he's married to a woman who's old enough to be his kid. For a 43-year-old woman, because she's easy to control. Because all the other women he married, they stood up to him. after his abuse. I just hope this woman he's married has got, what the hell do you call that? Has good alimony, either that or has that thing you, when a person gets married, what the hell? The word will be on the screen. Prenup. Yeah, I hope she got a good prenup. Because if she can take Roger to the cleaners. Envy, megalomaniac, you got that right. Excuse me. And then Roger Waters, shortly after Polly Sampson made that heartfelt, honest tweet about Hail Roger Hitler, had the balls to say Roger had this. Roger's aware of the incendiary and wildly inaccurate comments made about him on Twitter by Polly Sampson, which he refutes entirely. And he's currently taking advice to his position. And Roger, I called you on your lip syncing a long time ago, and what'd you do, you son of a bitch? Oh yeah, you blocked me from your Instagram, you stupid motherfucker. Folks, I didn't mean to use that word, but that's exactly what Roger is. Oh boy. And then David Gilmour went to bat for his wife. God bless David. And he said about his wife, Polly Sampson's tweet, every word demonstrably true. David, you got that right. And then after this, Roger Waters does another interview. And this is where Roger, in my mind, has gone completely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and completely has lost his mind. An interview with The Telegraph, which is an English newspaper. He's basically now taking shots at not only David Gilmour, but the late Richard Wright, saying that neither of them could write songs. Newsflash, Roger, why did they do solo albums in 1978? Because you held their creativity back, you fool. Animals was the first album where you went on your, we do what I want. In fact, Rick quit the band for 2 days because of your abusive attitude, Roger, you fool. So I'm reading this from Guitar.com. Roger Waters now has re-recorded Dark Side of the Moon as a solo project without the knowledge of his former bandmates, and basically said Syd Barrett went loopy due to drug use, and Roger was actually the one who fired Syd Barrett before the gig at Southampton University. And they claim, and Roger says, they say I was autocratic. And he took the view of, David, you play the guitar and sing and do as you're told. And then he went on to explain that his main problem with his ex-bandmates is that they couldn't write material. Well, the Atom Heart Mother, Metal, Obscured by Clouds, Dark Side of the Moon, and Wish You Were Here albums were band albums because most of the music on those albums were written by, David Gilmour and Rick Wright. And Roger Waters predominantly wrote lyrics. Atom Heart Mother, each of them had songs, and then it was bookended with band composed instrumentals. Metal was predominantly band compositions. Up through Wish You Were Here was a band. Then starting on Animals, it became a Roger Waters dominated project. And then Roger said, Nick Mason never pretended he couldn't write material, but David Gilmour and Rick Wright, they can't write songs. They've nothing to say. They are not artists. Roger, you call yourself an artist? Then again, Britney Spears calls herself an artist, and she can't write fucking songs. At least David Gilmour can write music. He writes music in his sleep. In fact, he has stockpiles of music ideas that every time he makes a new album, he goes back to his old bag of goodies and finds a piece of music that will fit at the time. Because sometimes you write so much music, you just stockpile ideas, and then you go back to it at later times to create new material. So he hasn't run out of ideas. And Rick Wright, well, Rick made a solo album out of Wet Dream in 1978, which is my second favorite Pink Floyd solo album after David's first one. And Nick Mason's Fictitious Sports is a better album than yours. Terrence just said that, yes. And, Roger, you call yourself an artist, then again, you're now like Lady Gaga and Britney Spears. Shock value. God. David and Rick have no ideas. They admitted they don't write lyrics as good as you, but they make up for it with music. Music is most important. And you said they had no ideas, not a single one between them. they did not ever have ideas, and that drives them mad. No, it drove you mad that they carried on without you, selling more albums and filling stadiums, that it drove you to the breaking point where, oh yeah, you did, on Amused to Death, you didn't even play a goddamn note. You didn't even play one single instrument on Amused to Death, Roger. None. Zip. Zero. And that album didn't do as well as you hoped because of a thing called Pearl Jam and Nirvana and grunge, and Alice in Chains came along, and Amused to Death was seen as, looking back at that album now, folks, that album was too bloated, too out of date. Listening to it now, it's like, God, there was something missing on that album. Oh yeah, the balance of Gilmour and Wright keeping Waters' dour musings intact. That's what I loved about those Pink Floyd albums. David Gilmour and Rick Wright, the two musical brains behind the band. Yeah, I said it. And Rick Wright, who passed away in September of 2008, Roger also opined that Rick Wright's final solo album, Broken China, he compared it to that rapping piece of shit, Drake. I apologize for swearing again. But yeah, Roger Waters had the balls to call Rick Wright vacuous as Drake? You gotta be kidding me. Drake is just a gang-banging wankster. For those of you who don't know what a wankster is, it's a fake gangster. I mean, good Lord, Roger. I mean, your last album, or two albums, have been what Stone Cold Steve Austin perfectly said.
Boring. Boring? What's he talking about? Boring. What's he got? What's he got in his hand? Boring. You know, I ain't slept in a couple of days. So I figured you're so damn boring, maybe you could put old Stone Cold to sleep. Oh my! I was outside a while ago. I was watching the grass grow. I was watching the paint dry. And I was so damn bored, I said to myself, what can be even more boring than this that can actually put Stone Cold Steve Austin to sleep? Boring! Better than a sleeping pill, kid. Oh. Austin's pulling a Rip Van Winkle. Look at this. That's a snoring. And let me tell you this one final time. You're the most boring human being I've ever seen in my life. And that's the bottom line. Because Stone Cold said so.
I love Stone Cold Steve Austin, but it's true. You are boring, Roger. And you are just angry, miserable, and it doesn't stop right there, folks. Not only did he attack Rick Wright in death, but he also, to that Alex Jones wannabe, Joe Rogan, said that Eddie Van Halen was talentless. Are you nuts? Eddie Van Halen you don't give a damn about? You forgot something, Roger. Who played on Lost Boys Calling for the Legend of 1900, a song you wrote and sang for that movie? Oh yeah, Eddie Van Halen played on it. The two guitar solos, the one in the middle and the one at the very end. Do you think maybe Roger is developing dementia, folks? We'll keep it posted. And you also took a cheap shot one time at the late Neil Peart of Rush. Neil had a lot of class, a lot of panache, loved you as a fan. What'd you do to him? You spat on him when he kindly asked you if he could play at the Wall in Berlin in 1990 on drums. Yes, folks, this was true because I actually had a magazine that featured Rush on the front that was imported from England. I think it was Classic Rock or something. And Neil Peart talked about it. And Neil said, as much as I love Roger, he was very rude to me, turning me down to play the Wall in Berlin with him. Yeah, and he basically defaced my lyrics. End quote. Yeah, Roger had the nerve to disrespect Neil Peart. How could anyone disrespect the professor? That is harsh. Roger, I stood by you through everything. But for you to do this stupid crap, I have lost whatever respect I had left of you, Roger. And Roger, for the way you've treated David Gilmour, his wife, Richard Wright, Eddie Van Halen, Neil Peart, and what you said about AC/DC and a few other bands, Roger, you can go to hell. One more thing. Sheesh, I sound like Columbo. Just one more thing. Oh my goodness, I sound like Columbo when I say that. Roger apparently took back what he said, saying, "Oh, I didn't make that. The journalist minced my words." No, Roger, you said exactly what you said to that reporter. Now you're trying to take back what you said, Roger. You are, without a shadow of a doubt, the dumbest bastard known to mankind. I've stuck up for you for many things, but once you took shots at Rick Wright, Eddie Van Halen, and Neil Peart, and David Gilmour's wife and family, and David himself, there's no going back. I mean, I'll still listen to the work you did with Pink Floyd up through the final cuts, but I'm telling you something, Roger, and you better be listening carefully, because I know you don't listen because you had me blocked from your Instagram account, you bastard. Don't expect me to buy any more of your concert tickets. In fact, the last tour I went to was The Wall in 2012, and I didn't go to Us and Them because you lied about your lip syncing, which, once you go Milli Vanilli, that's where I draw the line. You're just as bad as Tommy Shaw and Styx in their revisionist history. You and your revisionist history, you can go suck a big one. And Roger, you can go straight directly to hell, because I am not buying your re-recording of Dark Side of the Moon if it's just as bad as that atrocious defecation of Comfortably Numb, which you're claiming you wrote, when last I checked, David Gilmour wrote all the music to that song, and he changed the keys to accommodate your singing voice. That was David's piece of music. So yeah, David wrote all of Comfortably Numb. David wrote all of Run Like Hell. And musically speaking, he wrote the music for both, and most of the music for Young Lust. And he wrote parts of pieces of music which you never gave him a credit for, like the 4/4 section in Money. That was written by Gilmour, but did you give him a credit for it? No, but he lent it to you because he's a generous man, A, and B, it's for the greater scheme of the band, which you forgot how to be a team player, because it's all been about you, I, me, mine for the last, ever since you left the band, or actually you broke up the band, and now you're angry at David just because David did not do what you wanted. So you decided to go back on your word and attack David and become a little vengeful little troll with your little boyfriend, John Karen, that little bitch. He blocked me because I said he looked like the walking advert for Nitol, which was a sleeping pill. Nitol will help you get your Z's. That's what he looks like, ladies and gentlemen. And then he blocked me, and then he blocked me again when I said, why don't you let Steven Wilson, who's done wonders with the Jethro Tull, Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and King Crimson catalogs in 5.1, have a crack at the Pink Floyd catalog himself. What happened? Blocked. God. What's wrong with Steven Wilson? He did a lot of great work. Even Rush's Farewell to Kings, he had a chance at remixing himself, and arguably did better than Richard Tchaikovsky's 5.1 mix. So John Karen is behaving like a Karen, and yeah, he took shots at Rick Wright, saying Rick didn't do shit on the division belts because you're sour grapes, John. Why didn't you say that when you were alive? Oh yeah, because you know you did squat tall on the album. David and Rick did the lion's share of the keyboards. I'll give you this. You did do the piano on Great Day for Freedom. You did do the piano on High Hopes. And you did the intro synth on Maroon and programming stuff. But the rest of the keyboards was David and Rick. Rick Wright for the lion's share of the album, and David Gilmour on some other parts. And you and Roger, your boy toy, can go directly straight to hell. So on that note, let's switch gears from pissing on Roger Waters and his stooges to talking about something that kicks ass, and that is Crime of the Century, by Supertramp. I hope you enjoy it. Supertramp had their humble beginnings back in 1969 when an eccentric Dutch millionaire, music biz wannabe, caught wind of a British band called The Joint. Middegeist was so impressed with this group, this Flying Dutchman was so impressed that he offered singer, songwriter, keyboard player Rick Davies an offer to form a new group with this guy's money, if Davies would put this band together. Hundreds of auditions later, just what I said, hundreds of auditions later, the group was formed. Now, with the new name of Daddy, the band featured Davies and a multi-instrumentalist named Roger Hodgson on guitars, bass guitar, keyboards, and vocals. But the name Daddy didn't do much, so they divorced that name and decided to rename themselves, naming it after a autobiography of the early 20th century called Autobiography of a Supertramp. Over the next 3 years, the band signed a deal with A&M Records and released 2 albums, the self-titled and indelibly stamped, but neither album sold. But the guys in the band were starving and frustrated because of lack of success, and the bands really didn't click. The first album was typical progressive rock of the 69-70 era, and then 71, the second album, hinted at the sound that they would perfect with the third album. And the band was about to throw in the towel, except they needed the towel to keep them warm. And Supertramp actually broke up for 2 days, and Hodgson decided he wanted to go to India after the demise of the group. But it was new bass player Doogie Thompson, a Scotsman, and their sound man that was like, hey, wait a second, don't throw in the towel. There's perfect writing combo between you and Rick. Let's give the band another try. So then that's what they decided to do, is give the band another try, and decided to audition a couple of more musicians. So now you had Hodgson, Davies, Thompson, and a saxophonist woodwind expert from Yorkshire, England named John Helliwell joining the ranks. And he would also bring in third keyboards, backing singing, and various other things as time wore on in the band. And a drummer from Southern California named Bob Siebenberg. And now the band was 3/5 English, 1/5 Scottish, 1/5 American. So it turned into an Anglo-American band by 1973. So with a lineup that they were finally content with, the band decided to go renew their relationship with A&M Records. But as they quickly found out, it was not going to be easy because there was a lot of changes at the record label since they last put out a new album in 1971. So they arrived at A&M in offices in London, and they said, hey, we're here. And the people there were like, the bloody hell are you guys? And they said, hey, we're on your record label. And the staff didn't recognize them. Excuse me. Luckily, an A&R guy at the record label, a gentleman by the name of Dave Margerson, decided to take a gamble on the band and eventually become their manager for the next 10 years. Because Dave Margerson saw something in this band that a lot of people didn't see. And he heard some of the demos that they were doing, and he sent them to a house in the countryside of England to do some woodshedding and get their musical cues up and running, which is exactly what Supertramp did over the next several months at this cottage in the English countryside. And the band was there with their wives and girlfriends and kids and getting themselves together and working on songs that would eventually surface as songs on the next 2 albums. The lion's share would be on the first album they would do together, Crime of the Century. And once they were given the go-ahead and the band was woodshedding its material and finishing crafting songs that would surface on the next 2 releases, Supertramp decided to hire Ken Scott to produce their third album with the band. Previously having worked with the likes of David Bowie and the Beatles, and Pink Floyd as an engineer, Ken Scott could not have known that this album from an unproven band would turn out to be his masterpiece as a producer. And the band recorded Crime of the Century at various different studios in England in the early part of 1974. Some of the studios were Scorpio Studios, Trident Studios, also a studio called Ramport Studios, which was run by The Who. The Who had built Ramport to record Quadrophenia, and the band decided to have, and the band was nice enough to let Supertramp record their third album at that very studio that The Who had. As I grab the CD booklet here, just bear with me, I'm live, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, so I don't need Wikipedia, I have the booklet here. So the album was recorded predominantly at Ramport Studios, which is The Who's recording studio. That's where The Who recorded Quadrophenia. Also at Trident Studios in London, and at Scorpio Sound Studios in London. And it was engineered by Ken Scott and John Jansen. And the band continued just working, and they actually had to record the album and the tracks in bits and pieces, and mixing the songs proved to be kind of a chore, because they would spend several hours mixing a verse on one track, and then a few hours later they'd be mixing the chorus. And then some songs there would be like 20 zillion edits into the music. And on top of that, Supertramp were working hard to prove to the world that they were going to be a force to be reckoned with, especially with the music they were creating for Crime of the Century, which, if I'm not mistaken, was created during the early part of 1974. And those were in the days where A&M, especially Jerry Moss and Herb Alpert, heard the demos and they said, well, let the guys in Supertramp do what they want. We got faith in them. We know they're going to deliver a good record. So let's give them another try. So they were of the old school A&R execs who were fans of the music, not wanting to, say, hey, we need a hit or you're dropped. A&M was one of those record labels where they would let their artists grow and grow. Let's see. Cat Stevens, Peter Frampton, Styx, Supertramp, all of them developed an audience before success finally struck. And with 8 songs on this album, and several other songs that were recorded during the session that would serve as B-sides during the Crisis with Crisis era, the band just kept crafting all these tunes, and the band would release an album that to this day remains a masterpiece in the history of classic rock. So Crime of the Century was finished by summer 1974, and then it was released at the tail end of 1974. And the response to the album, let's just say the album did a little better than previous Supertramp albums, as I will tell you how well it did when I'm done with the review. But my introduction to this album came from my favorite radio show of all time, In the Studio with Redbeard. It was over 33 years ago this month, February of 1990, that Redbeard spotlighted Crime of the Century on an episode. And by that point I had only heard some of the radio hits, like the songs from Breakfast in America. But one day in February of 90, Redbeard said, we're in the studio with an album that exemplifies the perfect crime. And then I heard Bloody Well Right, and I'm like, this is a Supertramp song I actually dug. I'm like, let's listen to the making of this album. Which I actually recorded the whole thing, and Redbeard played 6 of the album's 8 songs on that episode. He played practically 75% of the album, which blew my mind, because on most episodes he would play a good chunk of the album he was spotlighting. In this album, which was interviews with Roger Hodgson, and that episode's actually helping me with the review, as well as the booklet essay that came with the deluxe edition of Crime of the Century that came out in 2014, is helping me with this review. Because remember, I'm banned from Wikipedia, so I have to use other methods to do this review. So where there's a will, there's a way. So Crime of the Century was the first Supertramp album I heard practically almost the whole thing. Loved it, but for some reason for the next 10 years didn't own it until I got a CD copy that was used, liked it, and then I decided to buy it brand spanking new when it was remastered in June 2002 on CD. And then I got the deluxe edition, the current version of the CD, which is the EU Deluxe Edition, which I got for my 39th birthday back in 2015. I want to thank my father for that. And to me, the best sounding remaster is the 2014, done by the original mastering engineer on the original album, Ray Staff, who originally mastered it at Trident Studios, which he then remastered at Ear Studios in London. And I've had this album on 2 formats, vinyl and CD. And I haven't heard the Mobile Fidelity CD, but the Ray Staff remaster from 2014 to me is the tops. And everyone's like, how could he remastered it if the Universal Music tapes caught fire? I'm like, well, they had a storage facility in London for some of their British acts at A&M, so they still had master tapes, the actual original tapes, stored in England at a Universal tape facility in London. God bless the British for being much more astute than the Universal Studios people who didn't know what the hell they were doing. The British at least had remained 2 steps forward, whereas Americans, no disrespect to my own home country, can be backwards. So what do I think of the songs? Well, I'll talk about my love for these songs right now. And we begin proceedings with a song called School, which begins with Rick Davies' harmonica setting up everything very hauntingly with a drone that would be surfacing later in the album. And then Roger Hodgson's electric guitar arpeggiating, kicking into a song with him singing, I can see you in the morning when you go to school. Don't forget your books. You know you've got to learn the golden rule. Teacher tells you stop your play and get on with your work. And be like Johnny Too Good. Well, don't you know he never shirks. He's coming along. And then the gling. Oh my goodness. Gling, 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 gling. And building him with various effects. And then the band comes in with the after school is over. You're playing in the park. Don't be out too late. Don't let it get too dark. They tell you not to hang around and learn what life's all about. And grow up just like them. Won't let you work it out. And you're full of doubt. Into the amazing Wurlitzer electric piano thing led by Rick Davies, the boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, with Roger Hodgson and John Halliwell doing a guitar and clarinet solo in unison. Do-do-do-do. Oh my goodness, and then the boo-doo-doo-doo, as that was going on. Do-do-do-do-do. And the guitar is now doing the arpeggiating thing that the Wurlitzer was doing, and the clarinet doing the high-pitched stuff. And then the drums slowly coming in via fade-in into this piano solo played amazingly by Rick Davies on both grand piano and Wurlitzer. If you listen carefully, both speakers, you can hear both pianos playing the solo in unison. And then during the bridge section, Rick Davies joins in on the vocal. Don't do this and don't do that. What are they trying to do? And then Roger sings, make a good boy of you, do they know where it's at? And then they both sing, don't criticize their old and wise, do as they tell you, don't want the devil to come and put out your eyes. And then the band at the end, maybe I'm mistaken expecting you to fight, or maybe I'm just crazy, I don't know wrong from right, but while I'm still living, I've just got this to say, it's always up to you if you want to be that, want to see it that way, you're coming along, ending with that triumphant A minor chord. And Roger Hodgson said about the lyrics of the song, my 10 years at English boarding school left me with a lot of questions and spurred me on my journey of self-discovery. And he told Redbeard it was about his schooling. And this song and a couple others were the last embers of the proper Davies-Hodgson collaboration songwriting team, because although they were credited as songwriting together, Crime of the Century, according to Roger, was the last time they would work together as a unit. But this song is such a haunting, atmospheric opening tune. I love the tune. This song is so amazing, awesome, brilliant. Perfect opening song for an album. Also opening song for a concert, because the band would open every show, with the exception of the famous Last Words tour, with this track. It would be the first song on the Crime of the Century tour, the Crisis What Crisis tour, the Even in the Quietest Moments tour, and of course the Breakfast in America tour. Live version appears on the double live album Paris in the 2-CD DVD set Live in Paris 79, which was from another show during those run of Paris gigs that Supertramp did in 1979. But my God, School, studio version, live version, doesn't matter which version, the song is awesome. And the thing is, with the live version, Rick Davies began with the harmonica with a slight variation, then Roger Hodgson did a slight variation of the guitar arpeggiating at the beginning with his Fender Stratocaster, and then instead of the drums fading back in, the drums just jump right in with the do-do-do-do-do, with that do-do-do-do, and then Rick Davies would leave the Wurlitzer electric piano and then go right to the grand piano to finish the tune, and play the rest of the song at the grand piano, because they would play another song, Rick would do another song at the grand piano afterwards on the tour for Breakfast in America, that being Ain't Nobody But Me. But to me, yeah, perfect opening song, epic, godly, amazing. God bless Roger Hodgson for writing it, and God bless Redbeard for playing it in the studio with Redbeard, because if I hadn't heard it on there, I may not have ever heard the song on terrestrial radio. Back in 1990, you could get away with playing stuff like this on the radio. After 1996, everything became stifled. God, some people are ridiculous. But School, great tune, not much more to add. Now we get to the next track, which was the first Rick Davies solo lead vocal on the album, and it was the first song that was released as a hit for Supertramp in the good old US of A, Bloody Well Wright, which begins with Rick Davies' Wurlitzer piano solo going, just playing amazingly, and then the band just kicking right in, and then Roger Hodgson's guitar solo with the wah-wah pedal, and then him playing in unison with himself on the Stratocasters on both speakers, and Rick's voice drenched in delay, singing about the counterpoint to Roger Hodgson's School with the following. So you think your schooling is phony? I guess it's hard not to agree. You say it all depends on the money and who is in your family tree. And then into the chorus, which is sung with Rick singing with a delay on his voice. And then during the chorus, his voice is dry, no effects, with a Wurlitzer piano on one speaker and a tack piano, sound like a player piano, on the other speaker, going into the right. You're bloody well right. You know you got a right to say. Right, you're bloody well right. You know you got a right to say. Aha, you're bloody well right. You know you're right to say. Yeah, you're bloody well right. You know you're right to say. But me, I don't care anyway. Then back into the do-do-do-do-do, which is a killer guitar riff, which Roger Hodgson played on his Stratocaster. Write your problems down in detail. Take them to a higher place. You had your cry, you know I should say wail. In the meantime, hush your face. And then, right, quite right. You're bloody well right. Oh my goodness. And the song ends with a brilliant instrument solo that you blow into, John Helliwell's tenor saxophone solo, which ends the song very perfectly. When they did this live, well, actually, before I talk about the live versions, the song Bloody Well Right was a counterpoint to Roger Hodgson's heartfelt outpouring in School, and Davies' direct lyricism and thunderous musical invective. And Davies was just basically saying, you know, your schooling was nonsense, and I guess it's not hard to agree. And the second verse commencing with an equally acerbic jab. And of course, the live version, the studio version, just ends with John Helliwell just soloing his heart out on that tenor saxophone as the band's just playing out. In live versions, as that solo was playing, Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson would go into falsetto mode with the ooh, ooh, you bloody right, mama, as John is just soloing his head off on the tenor saxophone. And this song was played on every Supertramp tour since 1974. The song has remained in the set list ever since. Whereas Roger Hodgson continues to play School, the rest of Supertramp continue to play this particular track. And on the final tour with Roger, there was a dueling saxophone solo for a change. John Helliwell, instead of using his normal tenor sax, was using an alto saxophone, playing the notes that he can hit, and he can't hit the high notes on a alto. John was not an altissimo player. He just played whatever he felt. And then Scott Page, who was the third guitarist and second horn player on that tour, was playing countertenor saxophone using a Yamaha tenor, hitting altissimo notes that would have made Lenny Pickett proud. And John and Scott would trade leads, and then the two would play in unison at the very end. Whereas on the previous live versions, John was just soloing his normal self on the tenor. And then on the 1985 Brother Where You Bound tour, the sax duel was now both tenors. John with his tenor, playing in his way, and then trading with Scott Page once again. John playing the lower notes on the tenor, and then Scott Page on his tenor, playing extremely high notes. And John then playing as John always does. Then again, John Helliwell is my favorite sax player, and one hell of a funny dude. And the live version on Paris, amazing. The live version from Hammersmith Odeon, because they played this whole album in a concert on the subsequent tour for the album. And on all the tours with Hodgson up till 1983, a live version appears on the Paris album and the Live in Paris CD-DVD combo pack that was released in 2013. But Bloody Well Right is more than all right. It's awesome. And this song was Supertramp's first U.S. Top 40 hit, peaking, I think, at either number 36 or number 35. One of the two will say on the screen. But yeah, it was the first hit for Supertramp because the song that was released as the initial A-side got switched by DJs for this classic. And God bless Rick Davies for writing Bloody Well Right. How can anyone hate Bloody Well Right? It's humanly impossible to hate this tune. Bloody Well Right for the win. Now we get to one of Roger Hodgson's best tunes, the almost 7-minute Hide in Your Shell, which Roger Hodgson told Redbeard he wrote while the band was woodshedding the material for the album, and when he first wrote the song, he got goosebumps from how great it was. And it's a passionate expression on the way he has always used his songs to reveal and show what's on his mind and his heart. And he said here, I've always been able to express my innermost feelings more openly in the song, and Hide in Your Shell came to me at a time when I was feeling very lonely, both in life and within the band, with no one who shared my spiritual quest. It's a song that speaks to that place in all of us who feel alone or misunderstood, that place where we just want to hide from the world, that longs for connection, yet doesn't feel safe to reach out for help. And reading the lyrics here, which has Roger Hodgson now on the Wurlitzer electric piano, and Roger singing "Hide in Your Shell" because the world is out to bleed you for a ride. What will you gain? Making your life a little longer. Heaven or hell was the journey cold that gave you eyes of steel, shelter behind, painting your mind and playing Joker. And then the chorus: too frightening to listen to a stranger, too beautiful to put your pride in danger. You're waiting for someone to understand you, but you got demons in your closet. And you're screaming out to stop it, saying life's begun to cheat you, friends are out to beat you, grab onto what you can scramble for. And the chorus, which features a bowed saw being played, as Roger's saying it, with some acoustic guitars and saxophones. Don't let the tears linger on inside now, because it's sure time you gain control. If I can help you, just let me know. Well, let me show you the nearest signpost to get your heart back and on the road. If I can help you, just let me know. And then you have a little organ solo played by Rick Davies with the band going, dum, ba, dum. Oh my goodness. And then the second verse, all through the night, as you lie awake and hold yourself so tight, what do you need? A secondhand movie star to tend you? I, as a boy, I believed the saying, the cure for pain was love. How would it be if you could see the world through my eyes? Then the second too frightening section with the fires becoming colder, too beautiful to think you're getting older. You're looking for someone to give an answer. What you see is just illusion. You're surrounded by confusion, saying life's begun to cheat you. Friends are out to beat you. Grab onto what you can scramble for. Then a repeat of the chorus, again, with the band with Roger, Rick, and John harmonizing. If I can help you, just let me know. Oh my goodness! And then it goes into the section, the bridge section, which is the I wanna know, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da. You'd be singing this section for days. It's so catchy and hooky. I wanna know you. I wanna know. Let me know. I wanna feel you. I wanna touch you. And then Roger's voice going higher and higher. Can you hear what I'm saying? Well, I'm hoping, I'm dreaming, I'm praying. I know what you're thinking. See what you're seeing. Never ever let yourself go. Hold yourself down. Hold yourself down. Why don't you hold yourself down? And then the band and choir started singing, so what you gonna do tonight? So what you gonna do? As Roger saying, why don't you listen? You can trust me, there's a place I know the way, a place I know, need to feel you. Feel that you're not alone, or won't you hear me? And know exactly what you're feeling, because all your troubles are without you. Begin to see that it's just bleeding to, oh, let me, love you. Loving is the way to help me, help you. Why we must be so cool. Oh, so cool. Oh, we're such damn fools. As the choir's saying, so what you gonna do? And it ends with John Helliwell playing an amazing tenor saxophone solo as the song fades out. And if you listen carefully, not only do you hear an organ at the very end of the song, but also a string synthesizer, which was the Elka Rhapsody synthesizer, which Supertramp popularized in the live setting back at the time of this album. They were one of the first bands to use an Elka Rhapsody string synthesizer. They had the 1972 model. It was one of the first polyphonic string synthesizers. This was before the ARP, Selena String Ensemble, which everyone else and their mother wound up using. Supertramp used the Elka Rhapsody instead of it. And this song, like School and Bloody Well Wright, was played on every tour with Roger Hodgson in the band. Live version appears on the Live in Paris album and the Live in Paris CD, DVD, and on the bonus disc that comes with this deluxe edition of Crime of the Century. Every live version I've heard is amazing, but I give the edge to the Paris version in live setting. Studio version, though, is still my favorite, but this song sadly was overlooked. Apart from in the studio with Redbeard, you did not ever hear this song on the radio. Good thing Redbeard played this tune, because Redbeard knows real music, especially this masterpiece of a tune. I mean, how can anyone hide in your shell? The song brings me out of my shell every time I hear the damn thing. It's so amazing, beautiful, heartfelt. Not much more I can add. Now we end side one with Rick Davies' epic Asylum, which is in the same key as the previous track, B flat, and appears to pick on a similar lyrical theme, the sense of questioning isolation as the track unfolds. And John Helliwell, the sax player, woodwind, keyboard playing expert, said about the song, quote, "It was a tremendously exciting track to do. There weren't any gaps on the original, but we put those breaks in at the end of the song to emphasize the powerful nature of it. Rick had to sing the line not quite right a dozen times or more to get the right tortured sound to his voice, as well as the he's mad, which is voice cracked in the high note. That all created a great atmosphere on the track, which kind of helped define what the band was about." And the lyrics of the song kind of hint at the concept of what Crime of the Century's protagonist, who's later revealed in the album, was dealing with. Basically, our protagonist on the album is now gone crazy, being in a mental facility. Jimmy Cream was keen. His brain was always willing. His brain was always winning. I can't keep tabs on mine because it's really quite a joke. I see him down the road. I ask if he'd be willing to lend me 15p, which would be 30 cents, I believe. I'm dying for a smoke. Don't arrange me to have me sent to no asylum. I'm just as sane as anyone. It's just a game I play for fun. I told him, look, I said, I'm not the way you're thinking. Just when I'm down, I'll be the clown. I'll play the fool. Please don't arrange to have me sent to no asylum. I'm just as sane as anyone. And then into the chorus, will he take a sailboat ride? He's very likely to. Will he feel good inside? He ain't very likely to. Will he tell you he's alive? You know, he's always trying to, but nothing does he say. In the morning when the day's begun and Roger counters, hello, good morning, how are you? And in the evening or the noonday sun, what a lovely afternoon, as they say in England. What a lovely afternoon. Well, and then back to Rick singing, well, I've been living next to you. And then the next verse, Bluesy Monday is the one day that they come here, or in the live setting, it's out on Monday. Bluesy Monday is the one that they come, is the one day. When they haunt me and they taunt me in my cage. I mock them all. They're feeling small, yet they got no answer. They're playing dumb, but I'm just laughing as they rage. And then a repeat of the Don't Have to Send Me to No Asylum bit with double-tracked saxophones from John Halliwell, baritone and tenor, as he's playing brilliantly. And then a repeat of the Sailboat Ride chorus, which is just more powerful this time around, especially with the string arrangement by Richard Hewson, who conducted all the orchestrations on half of the songs of the album. This is the first of 4 songs where it features orchestrations on the album. And then Roger Hodgson counters this time in the morning when the day's begun with, do you think it looks like rain? And then in the evening or the noonday sun, you know, I nearly missed my train. And then living next to you, my friend, but what kind of friend are you? Is it the beginning of the sorry end? Will I ever see it through? I've never been insane. Or what's the game? I believe I'm dying. Into the do-do-do-dun. And on the studio version, Rick Davies screams, he's mad, 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 mad. In the live version on Live in Paris 79, the live versions from that tour, instead of screaming that, he goes, yes, he's mad, yes, he's mad. Studio version, he does, not quite right. Live version from 79, not quite right. Oh my goodness. The various differences, and then the high ooh, woo on the studio version, and then a few tones lower on the live version from Paris, the 2 live versions from Paris. He goes into Ric Flair mode. And instead of orchestrations, John Halliwell did the orchestrations on the string synthesizer in the live versions from 74 up through 83. They did play this on some shows of the famous Last Words tour, but it got dropped. But yeah, they did play it on every tour with Roger Hodgson. That was the last time they played it, was 83. And Roger Hodgson, for the first half of the song, would use a 12-string electric guitar and then switch to the Fender Stratocaster at the end. On the 1979 famous Breakfast in America tour, he would play up to, I've been living next to you, my friend, but what kind of friend are you? He would be playing his double-neck Gibson 12-string guitar, his double-neck Gibson electric guitar, and then switch over to his Fender Stratocaster at I've Never Been Insane, and then would use the wah-wah pedal and whammy bar and go, wow, 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 wow. Oh my goodness. And then the song, when it ends, goes into a repeat of the beginning, and then it kind of fades into the distance, and then you hear a cuckoo clock go off. In the live version from Paris, Rick Davies would go into this little piano jam, which would see a gorilla and a banana waltz on stage and dance. Oh my goodness. This band had a very quirky, loving, fun sense of humor whenever they played on stage. So their music may have been full of high drama, but on stage, a lot of comedic moments, especially during Asylum, where you would see a man in an adult banana suit and a man in a gorilla suit dancing, doing a jig, as Rick's going do 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 do, just jamming on that ending thing. Instead of doing like on the record, he would go into a little improv, and the drummer Bob Siebenberg would do a little disco beat, doing dun 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 dun. Then the cuckoo clock. Oh my God! Studio version, dramatic. Live, awesome. Any version of Asylum is great, and this song gives me Asylum from all the crazy buggers in the world, or as I like to say, pardon my language, what I'm about to say, because I'm allowed to say a few odd profanities, keeps me away from all the crazy motherfuckers who make this world a sad place to live in. The guys in Supertramp are awesome, especially for writing this Mamma Jamma Asylum. Now we flip the album over to side 2. We're already now on side 2 of Breakfast in America. Crime of the Century already. We're at side 2, which begins with a song Roger Hodgson had written. His first song he ever wrote on a Wurlitzer electric piano called Dreamer. And Roger Hodgson said of the song, "I've always been a dreamer, and the song just exploded out of me one day at my mother's house near Wantage, Manchester, England. I was excited. It was the very first time I laid hands on a Wurlitzer electric piano. I had this magical demo of the song on a 2-track tape recorder on which you can hear me banging cardboard boxes and light shades for the percussion and multi-layering vocal harmonies, and banging on electric fires, which are furnace heaters, as they say in England." But then it was a few years later when they started trying to record the tune in the studio, they weren't capturing the feel of the demo, so we put the demo he had done on 2 tracks of 24-track tape, and they played along to it and duplicated most of the demo, but in much higher quality. And the song was released as a single in the band's native England, and it was their first top 20 hit in their native England, just missing the UK top 10. Dreamer, you know you are a dreamer. Well, can you put your hands in your head? Oh, no. I said, dreamer, you're nothing but a dreamer. Can you put your hands in your head? Oh, no. And then I said, far out, what a day, a year, a life it is. You know, well, you know you had it coming to you. Now there's not a lot I can do. Dreamer, you stupid little dreamer, so now you put your head in your hands. Oh, no. Then the band just jamming on the do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. I said far out, I repeated the far out thing, and then work it out someday. And then the bridge section, you hear Rick Davies countering Roger, although live it was Roger and John. If I could see something, you can see anything you want, boy. If I could be someone, you can be anyone, celebrate, boy. If I could do something, you can do something. If I can do anything, can you do something out of this world? And then Roger and Rick go into Barry Gibb mode with take a dream on a Sunday, take a life, take a holiday, take a lie, take a dreamer. Dream, 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 dream along. And then the drums come in. Bum, 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 bum. Bob Siebenberg is a creative drummer on this track. And then, of course, Roger Hodgson goes into falsetto, dreamer. And then you hear, Rick and John going, come on and dream, dream along. Come on and dream, dream along. Oh, my goodness. And John would be, either playing glass, a wine glass filled with water on the rims, or in later live performances, synthesizer. And then into the final chorus, repeat of the first verse of the Dreamer, you know you're a dreamer. And Roger and Rick and John going, come on and dream, dream along. Come on and dream, dream along. Come on, come on. Oh my God, what a killer tune. And it ends with like a glockenspiel effect. And this song was performed by Supertramp first on the Old Grey Whistle Test in October of 1974 to promote this album. So it was the closest thing to a promotional video you have of the tune. And another song they did on Old Grey Whistle Test, which I'll bring up in just a bit. But this song was played live from the moment it was released. And Roger Hodgson still plays it live in his solo shows. But this song, oh man, do I love this tune. Sadly, it didn't do squat as a single here in the States when it was first released, because the DJs flipped the song over and played its B-side, Bloody Well Wright, which thankfully turned out to be the song that broke Supertramp open in the United States. It would be their first top 40 hit. And luckily, the song that just let the band just go to town. But the song would eventually become a top 15 hit in 1980 when its live version from the Paris album was released as a single and charted at number 15 in its live state from the Paris album in the fall of 1980. Dreamer, God do I love Dreamer. Great tune, and the song has been used in quite a few movies and in ads for movies like The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, and various other goodies. The song has been featured in movies, TV shows, you name it, the song has been featured. Another thing I forgot to mention about Dreamer is Bob Siebenberg remembers of recording the song, Doogie and I played along to Roger's demo to establish the tempo, feel, and form. After that, we just experimented with different sounds. Rick played one of my drum boots to get the right sound, tuned glasses of water, and sometimes Roger would scratch his beard. Instead of a shaker being played, we were all wide open. Although, by the time this album was released, Roger was clean-shaven, and they would have, various different things. And especially on the live Old Grey Whistle Test performance of this, the band would just go to town with it. Dreamer, great tune, be it live version on, the Hammersmith 75 performance, or 77 BBC Queen Mary, or the live in Paris performances, or live on the Famous Last Words tour. The song, just killer tune. Not much more to add. Now we get to Rick Davies' 7-minute epic called Rudy, which begins with a bunch of people arriving at a train station, which the train announcements and the train station sounds were recorded at Paddington Station in London, and intentionally included the towns of Didcot and Swindon, which was Roger Hodgson and Rick Davies' hometowns in England. And the song just starts with Rick Davies at the piano, building, and then he goes into Rudy's on a train to nowhere halfway down the line. He didn't want to get there, but he needs time. He ain't sophisticated nor well-educated. After all the hours he's wasted, still he needs time. He needs time for living. He needs time for someone just to see him. He ain't had no lovin' for no reason or rhyme, and the whole world's above him. Well, it's not as though he's fat. No, there's more to it than that. See, he's trying to play it cool. Wouldn't be nobody's fool. Then a little guitar solo from Roger. Into the pre-middle section, Rudy thought all good things comes to those that wait, and then John Halliwell's plaintive tenor saxophone comes in, but recently he could see that it may come too late into the do 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 do, which had an ominous Pink Floyd style laden guitar bridge, and then goes into a quiet little piano thing with strings by Richard Hewson once again just swelling just amazingly. And it was during this section Roger Hodgson talked about the song Rudy and Rick Davies' contribution and why he saw the character of Rudy as Rick Davies during the Crime of the Century album. And he basically believes if there's a concept within Crime of the Century, Rudy is the central character. From his schooling, it just seems to go downhill. He thinks he's crazy in asylum, and he's on a train to nowhere in the song Rudy. And it was basically mirroring where Rick Davies' personal life was at the time. He was very lonely, didn't have a girlfriend, didn't like to socialize, but a very interesting character once you got to know him. And at the time, and after he left the band, Roger said, I didn't appreciate Rick's lyrics. Listening back to his lyrics now, I thought they were brilliant. And this song was just, talking about himself. If Rudy is indeed him, I think he was talking about from personal experience from the outside as well as the inside. And then it goes into that quasi-disco thing where the band just, the strings come in and Roger singing all through your life, all through the years, and Roger and Rick counters, nobody knows, nobody cares. So dim the light, dark are your tears. Try as I might, I can't hold back the tears. Or in live setting on Paris, try as I might, I can't fight back the tears. How can you live without love that's not fair? Someone said give, but I just didn't dare. I didn't dare, I didn't dare. Live it was sung. He mumbled lyrics on the Live in Paris recording, but I just didn't dare. No, I didn't dare. And then what good advice are you waiting to hear? Hearing's all right for them, it's all there. Hearing's all right, you better. And then Roger and Rick singing the low, Roger the high. You better gain control now. You better show them all now. You better make or break now. You better give and take now. You have to push and shove now. You have to find some love now. You better gain control now. And then the band just rocking out the dun 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 dun. The creative bass playing of Doogie Thompson, and then going up an entire musical scale from E to F to F sharp to G to A flat, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat, back to E. It goes up the entire scale. da 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 da, with the guitars, the drums, keyboards, and strings playing it. Amazing. And then the people boarding off the train, and when they did that section live, the band would show a film from the BBC called Train Ride from Brighton to London, or from London to Brighton, and would play the film at right during that train sequence. And the band would just speed up the tempo during that section. And, John Helliwell, instead of playing the, just doing string stuff, instead of the orchestra, John Helliwell was using the Elka Rhapsody string synthesizers and later the Oberheim synthesizers on the Breakfast in America tour to play to the film. Although on some bits, Roger Hodgson would be playing synthesizer while John was playing his saxophones or clarinet. And then the song ends with Rick Davies singing, "Now he's just come out of the movie, numb of all the pain, sad but in a while he'll soon be back on his train." And it ends with a diddle-doo, diddle-doo. That's basically done on via orchestra, but live it was the synthesizers going diddle-doo. And of course the band played this live on the Old Grey Whistle Test at the time of the album's release. It was the pre-recorded instrumental track, but with the orchestra and the vocals removed. So Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson sang live lead vocal, and John Helliwell now playing string synthesizer in lieu of the string, the orchestra track that was on the original record. So John was playing the string synth, the Elka Rhapsody on the live version, on the Old Grey Whistle Test version from '74. This song, from the moment I first heard this on In the Studio with Redbeard, it was love at first listen. And yeah, the band held it in such high regard that they played on every tour ever since its release, up until the final Supertramp tour in 2010, which honored the band's 40th anniversary. And live versions appear on the bonus disc of Crime of the Century, live at the Hammersmith Odeon '75, also live in the Paris Live album, and the Live in Paris 2-CD DVD set. Oh my goodness, this song is just so epic, one of my favorite progressive rock opuses of all time, and not much more to add to Rudy, but a masterpiece. If anyone doesn't like this song, I don't know what the hell is wrong with people, because this song is, to pardon my language once again, kick fucking ass. And I'm sure as shit not kidding either. Rudy for the win. One other thing I forgot to mention about the song Rudy was that the song, as it stood on the album, was recorded in several takes and was edited in 14 pieces. According to Roger Hodgson, in an interview with Redbeard, they, like I said, they had to record, the songs, but then spend several hours mixing one section, then a few hours mixing another section, and they mixed Rudy in 14 different pieces, and there was 14 edits on the said studio cut. And you wouldn't even know it from the finished product, but that's how music was back then. You had to do things manually and have tape edits, whereas now with computers you could, do it easily on a computer. But back in 1974, when this album was done, you could only do so much. But what a classic Rudy is, and Rudy is a masterpiece. Now we can get to the penultimate song in the album, the Roger Hodgson penned If Everyone Was Listening, which its title was inspired by Shakespeare's As You Like It adage. All the world's a stage and all the men are merely players. For a largorical inspiration. A line that was also inspired on Rush's Limelight in their live All the World's a Stage album from '76, and Limelight on Moving Pictures. All the world's indeed a stage and we are merely players, performers, and portrayers, each another's audience outside the gilded cage. Roger Hodgson says about the song, if everyone was listening, he said, quote, "It's a longing for love in a world that's fallen apart," end quote. And reading these lyrics and this song in the key of C minor, very haunting key. The actors and jesters are here. The stage is in darkness and clear for raising the curtain, and no one's quite out certain whose play it is. And then the guys in the band, how long ago, how long? If only we had listened then, if we had known just how right we were going to be. For we dreamed a lot and we schemed a lot and we tried to sing of love before the stage fell apart. Then the chorus comes in. If everyone was listening, you know, there'd be a chance that we could save the show. We'll be the last clown to bring the house down. Oh no, please no. Don't let the curtain fall. Into a solo section which features clarinets being played by John Helliwell superbly, I might add. And then the second verse, well, what is your costume today? Who are the props in your play? You're acting a part which you thought from the start was an honest one. And then the orchestration by Richard Hewson comes in, very haunting and beautiful. Well, how do you plead an actor indeed? Go relearn your lines. You don't know what you've done. The finale's begun with Roger singing low and overdubbing himself singing high, although in the live setting it was John Helliwell singing that high falsetto. Then a repeat of the chorus with the orchestra intact. And then ending as it, you know, with oh no, please, no, don't let the curtain fall. And alternating between C sharp and C minor for 3 measures, and then just ending with that C minor chord. And before that final C minor chord, you hear Doogie Thompson going boom, 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 boom with the bass guitar, which is so filling and fulfilling on that track. But if everyone was listening, is a great tune, sadly overlooked in the grand scheme of Supertramp tunes. And this song was only on one compilation album. That was the very best of Supertramp Volume 2, and the band did play this on many tours between 1974 and 1979. It was played on the Breakfast on the Crime of the Century tour with John Helliwell playing the string synth instead of the orchestra. He had used the Elka Rhapsody. And then, of course, they last played it on the North American leg of the Breakfast in America tour of 1979 before it was dropped for, I think, Take the Long Way Home as it became a single. Yeah, If Everyone Was Listening was played up till summer of 79, then it got dropped once Take the Long Way Home was released as a single. And this song, a live version, does appear on the deluxe edition of Crime of the Century, recorded at the Hammersmith Odeon in March of 75. A phenomenal performance it is. And this song, no matter how many times I hear it, I still get goosebumps when I hear it. Great penultimate tune. Not much more I can add. Now we get to the grand finale of the album, which is the title cut, which was written again by Rick Davies and Roger Hodgson together, although Rick sings it. And it's about basically talking about what the hell's going on in the world. Now they're planning the crime of the century. Well, what will it be? Read all about their schemes at adventuring. Yes, it's well worth the fee. And then the band kicks in, so roll up and see. Dun, dun, dun. How they raped the universe. How they've gone from bad to worse. And then, who are these men of lust, greed, and glory? Rip off the masks and let's see, but that's not right. I know, oh no, what's the story? There's you and there's me. And then you hear him mumble at the very end, that can't be right. Although in the live versions, he doesn't say that. He just goes, there's you and there's me. And then to a blistering guitar solo from Roger Hodgson, which he just shreds like no tomorrow. And the band just playing briefly for a while, and then all of a sudden it stops cold. And then it goes into this outro, which is piano-driven, with Rick Davies doing the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Then the band coming back in with orchestra, strings, the string swelling, again conducted by Richard Hewson, and the brilliant tenor saxophone solo by John Helliwell, which is his sax equivalent of the solo on Comfortably Numb from Pink Floyd. David Gilmour's guitar solo on Comfortably Numb. This is John Helliwell's equivalent to that solo, but for saxophone. Just an epic way to end this album. And the song ends like it begins, with the harmonica being played aside suggesting that the listener may have come full circle. And this song, ever since its release, has been the closing song or encore for every Supertramp show since its release. A live version from Hammersmith appears on the deluxe edition of Crime of the Century. Another live version appears on the Paris Live album as the second encore after Two of Us. And it began with the drone into a spirited version of Crime of the Century. Then another live version appears on the Live in Paris 79 2-CD DVD set. And also another live version appears on The Story So Far, which was the live version from 1983's famous Last Words tour. And that was the only performance where Roger Hodgson and Fred Mandel did the guitar solo harmonies, just like on the record. Because prior to that, Roger had to do just one of the solos because they didn't have a second guitar player between 1974 and 1980. And during the song, the first half of the song, John Helliwell played synthesizers, replacing the organ. And then the second half of the song, Roger Hodgson took the guitar off, his Stratocaster off, or his Gibson Les Paul, went to the synthesizers to play the string parts on two synthesizers, the Elka Rhapsody and the Oberheim 8-voice. And then John Helliwell blowing that saxophone like you wouldn't believe. And then the band just speeding up intense. And then the live version would end a little differently with the bum, 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 ba-na-na, bum, bum. Ending with that A minor chord. And then you hear the Oberheim synthesizer do the octave dip from and then the harmonica being played over the PA as the band left the stage in darkness. What a masterpiece of a song. The song also appears on just about every compilation album they've done. The very best of Volume 1, Retrospectacle, as did Bloody Well Wright School, Dreamer and Rudy. This song appeared on it as well. The title track to Crime of the Century, amazing. Everything from Rick Davies' Roger Waters-like intense lead vocal to the band's kind of Pink Floyd-like atmospheric playing on it. Along with Dark Side of the Moon and Mike Oldfield's Tubular Bells album, Crime of the Century cemented the shift in focus amongst record buyers from 45s to the 12-inch vinyl album. And Ken Scott said when he finished listening to the album, they achieved perfection. And this album was perfection personified. And this was finally the breakthrough album the band was seeking. Because when it was released, the album did some things it didn't do with previous albums. For instance, Crime of the Century went top 5 in Canada and sold a million copies in Canada, which is kind of hard to do, but they did it with this album. And it also went top 5 in the UK, and it went to number 1 on the Melody Maker album chart in 75, because Roger Hodgson went to Morocco, oblivious to how well the album was doing, and when he came back to London, he saw a picture of the Melody Maker, and it said Crime of the Century, number 1. And he was shocked, knowing that his life was about to change forever. And Crime of the Century, when it was released here in the U.S., became Supertramp's breakthrough album, peaking at number 36 on the Billboard album chart, which at that point was the highest showing of any Supertramp album up to that stage. And because of ongoing success and the band just getting more and more successful with each go-around in the States, the album would go gold by July 1977, following the success of their Even in the Quietest Moments album, which I will re-air that episode at some stage in the game, but I wanted to do Crime of the Century. And the success to Crime of the Century was low and long and hard, and the band in those days decided to, when they toured to support this album, which is how they sold this album, they would play theaters, and they took a risk of not having an opening act. They played, according to Bob Siebenberg, a lot of half-empty halls on that first North American tour, but they did whatever it took to get people to see them. They would be on street corners and gave tickets away, went to schools, went to the front of the theater, and if they could get them in the first time, they would come back the next time. And they were right, because by the end of that first North American tour, they played the Santa Monica Civic Center in L.A. to 2,500 people. And the band's adventure would soon lead to them relocating to break into the United States, which they would eventually achieve permanently by 79, but would hint at 77. But 2 years from their near collapse, Supertramp basically rose like a phoenix. And Roger Hodgson says about the album, when I listen back to that album, is the fact that we put so much of ourselves on that album. It's an honest autobiographical album because we wore our inner selves on it. And in the end, I think that's what people mostly identified with. And the band just toured to support the album. And over the years, the album has just grown more in stature with each subsequent generation of listeners. Crime of the Century, to this day, possibly one of my favorite Supertramp albums of all time. I go back and forth between this and Even in the Quietest Moments as my two favorites. Both albums are just, they're on par with each other. Some people can have two favorite Supertramp albums. Some people can have two favorite albums from any band. Yeah, I know history says Breakfast in America was their best album. But personally, it's Crime of the Century and Even in the Quietest Moments. Those two albums were hard to top. And, Crime of the Century, since its release, has been reissued in various different remasters. First was the Mobile Fidelity CD. Sorry if my throat was closing up. The Mobile Fidelity CD, that remaster sounds great. But then it was remastered again in 1997 at Sterling Sound for the world outside the U.S. That CD was okay. The first U.S. CD was so-so. But it was too quiet sounding. Then 2002's remaster done by Jay Messina and Greg Calby was a little too loud. That was done at Sterling Sound in 2002, so it was a little compressed. Then in 2014, a new remaster was done by Ray Staff for Crime of the Century as a 2 CD or 3 LP set. And Disc 1 brought the 2014 remaster of the album done by Ray Staff, the man who originally did the mastering of the original album, at this time at Air Studios in London. Previous to that, he had mastered the album at Trident Studios in London. And on Disc 2 was a live performance that the band did on the Crime of the Century tour at the Hammersmith Odeon in London. And they played all the new album, plus 4 songs that would surface on the next album. Sister Moonshine, Just a Normal Day, Another Man's Woman, Lady, and the song A, You're Adorable, sung by John Helliwell. Showing you the band's sense of humor. Prior to that, that performance was available on a bootleg for many years and was also aired on BBC Radio. This time, it's good to have the original concert remixed by Ken Scott himself and sounding better than it ever sounded before. And, Crime of the Century, like I said, the deluxe edition is a masterpiece, and there were 2 other songs that were recorded for the sessions for Crime of the Century, but that were scrapped, which was actually released as a standalone single, then eventually remixed for potential inclusion on the next album. First was Roger Hodgson's Land Ho, which was the first song that the classic lineup ever recorded together, and a very catchy, upbeat ditty, which seems to get lost in the shuffle of all things Supertramp, but I think a catchy ditty tune. Not much more to add to Land Ho, but Land Ho indeed, the song rules. And then we have Rick Davies' Summer Romance, which is the second song title of that song title. At first I thought it was a cover of a Rolling Stones tune, but the Rolling Stones' song of that title was not until 1980's Emotional Rescue, which was a raunchy rocker with the band playing like punks. Supertramp's more, kind of 50s rock doo-wop thing with a brilliant double-track tenor saxophone solo by John Helliwell and Rick Davies singing like only Rick Davies can. But the song, great tune, not much more of a backstory, but those two songs would eventually surface on the 2005 2-CD set Retrospectacle, the Supertramp anthology. I mean, my only gripe with that compilation, whilst it was good to have those two songs, they should have included the studio version of You Started Laughing, which was an outtake from the next album, which again would see some familiar faces return for the next album. But that's a story for another day. But Crime of the Century, to this day, masterpiece, an album I don't ever get sick and tired of. Doesn't matter if it's the original studio version or the live recordings that the band did of these songs between 1974 and 2010, or Roger Hodgson's case recently, because Roger still plays his contributions to the album in the live setting. And the rest of the band played Bloody Well Right, Rudy, and the title track. Even Asylum was attempted a few times after Roger left the band. But, yeah, if the band loves the album so much that they still play the songs from it live, you can tell the band holds this album in high regard, as do I. And that's my look at Supertramp on this episode, but before I go, I'm going to do a recommendation to stick with the theme of Supertramp. I'm going to recommend the 2-CD deluxe edition of Crime of the Century, the aforementioned. You can go get it on Amazon.com or wherever you buy your music. It's 2 CDs. The first CD is the original album remastered, and disc 2 is that live concert from Hammersmith Odeon in London. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. And if you don't know where to start with Supertramp, I urge you to get these 3 compilations, or one of the 3. The Very Best of Supertramp Volumes 1 and 2, you'd have to buy both to get almost the whole of Crime of the Century, selections from Crisis, What Crisis, Even the Quietest Moments, Breakfast in America, Famous Last Words, Brother Will You Bound and Free as a Bird. So you get everything from the classic era up from 74 to 87 with those 2 compilations. If you don't feel like spending that kind of money, the other alternative is to buy, Retrospectacle, which has some rarities that are not available elsewhere. Like, for instance, it has the aforementioned Land Ho, Summer Romance, those 2 songs that were outtakes from Crime of the Century. Also, songs from the first 2 albums, songs from Crime, Crisis, Quietest, Breakfast, Paris, Famous Last Words, Brother Will You Bound, Free as a Bird. It was the Best of Times live album, Some Things Never Change, and their final album, Slow Motion. And in my mind, Supertramp really didn't make a bad album until Free as a Bird. Now that album should never have existed. Everything they did up through Brother Will You Bound was a masterpiece. They did somewhat redeem themselves with Some Things Never Change, but something was still missing. And then Slow Motion, I think, was the best album they did since Brother Will You Bound. So you can tell I'm a hardcore Supertramp fan. And since people love Supertramp on my shows, I figured I'd share my story about Crime of the Century. And that's where I'm going to have to pause for now. And before I go, I'm going to plug some podcasts, namely Eddie Trunk's podcast, The Rockin' Tours with Guy Pratt and Gary Kemp, and Chris Jericho's podcast, Y2J for the Win, the Ayatollah of Rock-a-Rolla. Long live Jericho. Anyone who doesn't like him, get your heads out of your ass. Chris Jericho rules. Even as a wrestler, he was funny. I've been a fan of his since his days in WCW and then later WWF/WWE. And his entertaining shtick of, would you please shut the hell up? How could anyone hate Y2J? Unless you're those 2 knuckleheads who don't like anyone but themselves. And also the following YouTube channels I'm recommending. Classic Rock Review with Barry, Professor of Rock, John Bowden's various classic rock channels, Mike Borland's classic rock YouTube channel. He's awesome. Also, Melinda Murphy's channel, Darren Locke, Darren for the win. How can anyone hate Darren? I mean, Darren and I had our differences, but at the end of the day, I have his back. He's got my back. And last but damn sure not least, my favorite, Pete Pardo, Sea of Tranquility for the win, and the original, the originator, not the imitator, but the originator of the track by track and various different video things, that he knew when to quit and go to other things because he likes to keep things fresh and entertaining. And yeah, I forgive him for his New York Mets whipping my Boston Red Sox's ass in 1986. But that's the only thing we disagree on is sports. Because he's New York, I'm Massachusetts. Just kidding, Boston. So before I go, here's some podcast plugs I want you cool fans of mine to give your love to, and to quote General MacArthur, I shall return.
Reporting for duty. That's right. After rocking the airwaves in Boston for 22 years on WAAF, welcome to the Mistress Carrie podcast. And if you love rock, this weekly podcast is for you. I'll introduce you to new bands that I think you are going to love and keep you in touch with the bands that are already your favorites. I'll take you backstage and expose you to the people behind the rock. Plus, we'll talk about everything else that we know and love, like motorcycles, tattoos, skydiving, hot rods, food, booze, and so much more. And let's not forget all of the branches of our military, our veterans, and first responders. Everything you know and loved about the Mistress Carrie show, but now I'm unfiltered and uncensored. Fuck yeah! And if you never heard me before, well, welcome to the party. Subscribe now so you don't miss Mistress Carrie podcast.
Please state the nature of the medical emergency.
Brain damage with Pink Floyd.
This stuff can give you brain damage.
In the Pink Floyd radio show.
Use only as directed.
There is no downside in the moon, really. Matter of fact, it's all this.
Your controls are set to the Random Precision Radio Network. This is Floydie and Slip, an hour of Pink Floyd. I'm Craig Bailey. Find us online at floydieandslip.com. Write to us at pink at floydieandslip.com. Floydie and Slip is a Random Precision production.
You're listening to Nights with Alice Cooper. I think my Speedo is starting to cut off the flow of oxygen to my head. And that's why I got so
temperamental with anyone. There's the impertinence to question his wisdom, and hello, I pops his inner courier.
Hi, and welcome to In the Studio. Redbeard here with the stories behind history's greatest rock and roll albums.
You're welcome. Guitar up. 1, 2, 3.
Follow In the Studio on Facebook, at Redbeard Rocks on Twitter, and online at inthestudio.net.
Well, my friends, the classic rock brainiac has got to give his melon, his cabeza, his brain, his head a rest for the time being. So this comes to a close, another episode of Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast. And unlike certain shows where they're going to stop talking about albums and just do news, what good is that? I'm going to keep on doing albums that had an impact on my life. And I've got a bunch more albums to cover in the next few weeks, one of which is a re-airing of the Rush 1981 episode, which was so good that I decided to just re-air it with a new intro and update on Rush's 1981 Moving Pictures album, which was re-released because I predicted on the original review. So that's coming soon as an episode, old but new, with my buddy JK. And also, I'm going to be discussing the 50th anniversary of Led Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy. That album I love, and yeah, I'm going to give it a love fest that you won't believe. And yeah, I don't have to rely on Wikipedia to do it either. Because who needs that left-wing atheistic site? I sure as hell don't. And also, Destroyer from Kiss, music from The Elder by Kiss. So a lot of Kiss coming soon. And yeah, I might even do an experiment. Metallica's The Injustice for All, then and now. Yours truly with his 2014 counterpart from a show I used to be associated with, see if my opinion had changed on certain songs of the album since that review. And I might even do it with a few other episodes, which I still have possession of those original recordings I was part of when I was with a certain show that I'm not going to name names because they don't like me, but I have to honor my history, so I will include yours truly, seeing if yours truly now still likes what he reviewed back then. Actually, quasi-spoiler, the Game by Queen I already did as a updated episode, and yeah, still love that album. And I'm looking forward to actually trying this new trick. The old Terrence versus the new Terrence, Metallica's Injustice for All, which is going to be an interesting experiment. I think I can pull it off. If I can, let me know. If not, I tried. So on that note, it's the classic rock brainiac, Terrence Reardon, loved by many, hated by few, including that 14-karat dipstick Brian 11474. How clever, how original of a name, you unoriginal bastard. If your name is not that dude, you all rule. But if you're Brian 11474, you're a dead man. But for the rest of you who do love what I do, I say this always. I love you all. Don't take shit from assholes. Pardon my language. Good night, my friends. I love you all. God bless you. Terrence's Classic Rock Corner podcast was written, edited, produced, so forth and so on by yours truly, the classic rock brainiac, Terrence Reardon. The intro and outro music is Confrontation by Craig Seafan, taken from the film soundtrack to the movie Thief. Copyright 2023, TJR Rocksponge Incorporated, all rights reserved. Once again, thanks for listening and or watching. I love you all. Good night. God bless you.